In this video, we're going to write the most complex formula that we're going to do in this entire course. It is a nested if formula, and it's going to be very easy if we follow step by step. But before we write that formula, we also have to create a couple of named ranges. So we'll do that first, and then we'll get into the formula. Okay, so let's create the list first. So let's check what lists we already have. Go to the formulas and the name manager. We need the list of holidays, and we also need the list of weekends. So L_holidays, we already have it. We don't seem to have the list for weekends. So let's go and check. And we also did not name the table 4 as vacation. So let's go and see if we can change the name of the table there and change it to T_vacation, because this is the vacation data. And then we don't see the list of weekends. So we're going to create that now. So close it, go to the settings. Where we want is this list of values. We want to call it L_weekends, WKNDS. And again, you can name it differently, but the L for list, weekend. So I know that this is the list of weekend choices. Now let's go back to the team dashboard. This selected area where we have 30 employees and 31 days across, this is all the cells where we are actually going to populate a formula. But we're going to do one formula in all of these. So we're going to create in one and then copy it all over. So it's just one formula that we're going to write, which will populate for each of the cells. Let's take this cell, for example. We're going to say employee 1. What was employee 1 status for March 1st, 2018? Was it a valid date? Was it was the employee employed on that date? Was the date actually a holiday? Was that a weekend? Or if did the employee take any vacation on that day? Or did the employee work on that day? So we need to show one of those values depending on what that specific employee did on that day. So if I go here to this cell, that means employee 1, what was employee 1 status for 11th March or 18th March. So when I go here, this is employee 3rd, employee 3, what did he or she do on Tuesday, March 6th. So that is the purpose of this formula that we're going to write. So now let's go and look at the logic that we want to implement before we start writing the Excel formula. It always helps to know the logic in your mind, or you can write it in a piece of paper or in Excel so that you're clear what you're trying to implement when it comes to more what I call as complex, because it's a lot of things you have to write and the formula is actually pretty long. So it always helps to have a clear idea what we are trying to do. And in this formula, what we're trying to do is if the date for which we are going to populate the value is not a valid date, for example, if it is February 30th, it doesn't exist. So we need to make sure that we put an NA for not applicable in that cell. And these values that I'm going to say can be replaced with any values that you prefer. However, make sure that you're consistent. So if you're using, instead of NA, you're using not applicable, make sure that you remember that in the subsequent formulas that we will be using this for. But otherwise, these values can be anything as you need. I use as short as possible. At the same time, it is descriptive enough that I know what it's referring to. So if the date is not valid, then put NA. If the employee is not valid, employee again here means we only have 4 employees right now in the data set. So for the 5th employee data, I just wanted to say NA because it's not applicable. If the employee start date is greater than our current date, so which means if the employee has not yet started, so if the employee started on May 20th, then on May 15th, the employee was not even employed. So we want to show NE as not employed. If the employee end date is already happened, that means if the employee has already left the company, then show not employed, NE. If the date is a holiday, then show HOL of a holiday. If the date is a weekend day, then show weekend, because we consider holidays and weekends as not non-working days. So we want to make sure that we look for those. And then if let's say if it's a holiday and a weekend, we would actually mark it as a holiday, because the order in which this logic is going to work is important. So if a if a Sunday happens to be a holiday, then this formula logic will actually label that as a holiday, not a weekend. Even though it's a Sunday, it's going to label it as a holiday, because in our logic, holiday line comes above the weekend. If you want a Sunday to be shown as a weekend, even if it's a holiday, then you would want to move this logic above the holiday logic, which we will write in Excel formulas and it'll become more clear then. But keep in mind that the order of implementation is important. The last part here is that if the employee had a vacation for that specific date that we are looking at, then we want to show the vacation type. And in this case, if the employee should not have multiple vacation types for the same date, it should not happen. And then else, if none of this is true, then we will call it a work day. The employee worked. So this is what we need to implement, and let's go ahead and implement that in Excel.